Okay.
So Ernesto.
Now, where were we before we
were
got so rudely interrupted?
So
By
Ernesto.
people doing their work. Can you imagine?
I can't imagine work. What is that?
We're at the senior center, by the way, in New York City, where we thought it was going to be really quiet. No one would know about it.
Seniors are very active.
Were we surprised?
So Ernesto, yes. So Ernesto and I. Now I'm trying to remember where we did leave off. He had the story. He had a sister. Oh, this is what I was doing.
Sister.
The story, the concept of the story is this nurse from Boston is called to do an organ transplant pickup in Los Angeles. And that's the city where she walked out on her life overnight and hasn't returned since. When she goes there, she runs into her past, and loses the cooler. So that's the setup of this story. But the background is, Ernesto and I wanted to do this story like a intentionally whimsical, accessible tale. Of a simple story about somebody making an amends, basically, and coming to acceptance about their life.
Yeah, but it was very punk rock when you have someone with a heart that she's transporting.
I know. Well, we wanted to raise the stakes a little. But Ernesto's sister does this work. She works at a child's
job.
Yeah, and so this was a very personal story he had been carrying for a long time, because she would travel. Like, she might go to Paris to do an organ transplant pickup, and it's in those coolers. Okay. But if there's a layover, she'll go see the Eiffel Tower or whatever. There's a photo of her with this cooler, so she has all these photos of her. And also working with children was this emotional thing for her in her life. So he kind of took that idea, and then also we took this idea of like how thin the line is between your life going along all right and it not. How things can turn, and then this idea of being interconnected, the ways that we influence each other without knowing it. And formed this story. He and Val Stadler wrote the story out, and we all worked together on hashing out certain story points, but they wrote the script based on this premise, of dealing with that running into her past and making it.
But you also have a romantic aspect to it too.
It's a very, it was interesting because someone at Outfest, we were talking about, that this is a queer film, even though it's not. There's the lead, which is a straight couple.
Straight people live in a queer world. Can you imagine?
Well, that's what I think. I'm like, you're on my terms. But I thought it's so queer. They were asking to, further talk about how it was queer, and I was like, well, it's also. I didn't say this then, but I thought it's a really funny cautionary tale against marriage in this way, about people falling into this default setting. It's about a couple that's not meant to be together, and yet they'd still held on to this past ideal, for the one woman because of the way she left, and for him because of the way she left. That they were sort of frozen.
It's an old story for heterosexuals, and it seems to be a new story for same-sex people.
Exactly. Let it be a cautionary tale against marriage and all sexual identities.
So the script is developed, and the producers were raising money. I assume it's a low-budget film.
Very low budget.
Did you have SAG? You had SAG actors in it, so you
did.
It's a SAG low budget.
Ultra indie. Okay. It's one of those ones.
I mean, it's really good that people know that is there.
Yeah.
That you can use good actors. Most actors will always do these things.
If there's something interesting, and we were so lucky with, everything, and the cast coming on. We were lucky that we were in LA, they could come for the day. But PJ, our cinematographer, came in from Austin, and he was like, I didn't think you guys could do an indie in LA, because we were so indie, not supposed to say however much it cost, but it was very little. And he was amazed.
PJ for a moment. There seems to be this community of queer filmmakers that are integrated in the indie community. Right. It's not like separate. Yeah. They work on lots of different projects, but this film in particular, everyone seemed to have shown up to work on Sunset Stories, from wherever they came from. And,
that's true.
And could you talk a little bit about that filmmaking community, the queer filmmaking community that wants to tell a narrative film, not an experimental film?
Right. In what context do you mean?
Well, you have PJ coming in from, who's been Academy Award nominated for, and is a cinematographer and a director and documentary filmmaker, but known as a cinematographer, and he comes in to be the cinematographer on this film, correct?
Yes. Right. Well, so maybe that community filmmaking, or just that community-based art making.
It's a community it seems that you all help each other out.
We do.
Just like there's this community in the film, in the narrative, in the story.
No, it's true.
That is very diverse. Now,
Yeah.
how many different parts of Silver Lake and Echo Park was represented?
No, it was very mirroring. You know, it's true that the cast and crew, you know, making this film, and also the way that we made it. So all over Silver Lake, we shot, but wherever we shot, they let us shoot for free. We would do our catering there, so we would, you know, it was like very green production in that we only spent whatever little money we had right there where we were shooting, and you know, we were like a mile radius from Valerie Stadler, who also produced with Tatiana Kelly the movie, and just she went out to all her favorite places and was like, please, can we? And we were able to find people that let us shoot for free, and we pulled it very much was this community of people, and then it was mirrored by this whole concept.
How long
of it.
did you shoot?
14 days.
Wow, that's. Did you storyboard everything?
No, I mean, we shot listed everything. We went to locations a lot, and then we shot an additional week after editing together and realizing
Pickup shots.
And even more than pickup shots, sort of. Ernesto and Valerie went back into the script to flesh out some of the beats of the two leads.
Do you have any problem with sound shooting that fast?
No, Adam, our sound guy, did an amazing job because we were outside, you know, and we were fighting light. We shot a lot of nights, and you know, like 5:30, the geese would start going in Echo Park, and we.
14 days is really a short shooting
short
schedule to do a narrative film. Did you do it in sequence?
No, that was the other hard thing. Is like,
even more so.
it's a chase movie. It's a road movie within a 2-mile radius. If anyone knows Silver Lake, they'll see where they're looking at the artwork, you know, in one corner of Alvarado, and then they're looking across the street at the other. But yeah, it was a.
Now there's a lot of cameo performances or small parts that in film can really just steal the moment because of the framing. And one of them is of the old Butch that's in the film.
Played by Sandy Martin, who's phenomenal.
Who works in mainstream television and film, and but she was the one that I really just blew me away. The authenticity. I didn't know she was an actor. I didn't know that she had all these credits. I just thought that you had found a real person that could be present on the screen. And what more can you ask of an actor? You know, I mean, quite frankly.
Well, yeah, no, that's it, exactly.
And it's the hardest thing to do, to be real on the screen.
No, it's true, and you run into exactly what can become difficult when you're wanting to cast someone to play Butch, you know, a masculine woman and a sort of authentic, and can act. I mean, Sandy Martin's credits are like, you know, she's on Big Love, and she's on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Napoleon Dynamite, and we'd originally written that with Peggy Shaw in mind, and I'd reached out to Peggy Shaw because I don't know a lot of actors and that age range who could play that specific role, and she couldn't do it. And then Valerie Stadler had thought of Sandy Martin, and who was generous enough to come on board and just bring so much heart and soul. And it's such an economy. Like, she has very little screen time, but you felt it. And actually, like, one of the least important structurally to the movie is the scene between Justin Vivian and her in terms of like just structure and following this trajectory. But it's a favorite scene of so many people's, and I just think that's the strength of the performance and the heart of these characters.
Justin Vivian, to Justin Vivian's credit, does not play a particularly likable character in the film.
Really? Oh, I think so.
Oh, well, you might think so, but I thought,
because there's a little bit of a push and pull with Monique.
Yes, and I thought, to Justin Vivian's credit, to not just be the lovable character on the screen, you know? I mean, it's
to be a full character, to be like a full, caught up in their world and their moment. Yes.
It's those little touches, which is what really, I think, makes this sort of Robert Altman kind of film come together, because in moment to moment, there are a few characters that carry through the film, but you get a representation of many different people and characters in the film. And if they weren't authentic, it would have been a disaster. If they hadn't found that way to be in that moment and be who the character was, you know. And some of that casting was because they were the character, but for the most part, it wasn't cast by people who were the real people.
No, it's true. They had the talent, and I think you're right. Like Justin Vivian, Sandy Martin, they brought someone that's not exactly like them, but they brought their authenticity and then their talent to create a character.
So you got finished shooting, and then what? I mean, how was the financing? Was the financing in place to go forward with the editing? And
it wasn't until Justin Lin came on board to executive produce and brought in-kind post-production that enabled us to get through editing and get through sound. It was very important because we were at zero. You know, you get through a shoot and everyone's like, yay, and you have this bonding and you feel like it's going to last forever, and then a week later everyone's back to work and you have these hours and hours of footage to put together. So
I really like the fact that it premiered at South by Southwest rather than at Outfest or Frameline or one of the you know, the expectable places for it to play, given who you are, you know, and some of the people in the film. And South by Southwest is certainly not a gay film festival.
Nope.
It's very much a frat town during South by Southwest, and
it's a zombie town during South by. I mean, everyone is so. By the time the music festival starts, it's just like, I don't know, like fog machines and people wandering drunk, and I feel like it's an insane town.
But it's also a film town. It's
Yes,
really
it is.
interesting because the university there has a really strong film department.
Yes.
And Ellen Spiro and some
Yeah.
of the teachers there are working filmmakers and documentary
Totally.
filmmakers. So you do have, there is what's interesting to me now is it used to be one festival. It really is 3 different festivals.
Yeah.
And people only go to the film part. It was just,
Yeah.
that never used to be the way it was.
No, it's true.
I was a judge in the very beginning of, and I never saw so many bad films in my life. I was used to going to New York Film Festival and Sundance and places like that,
Yeah.
where everything was really, you know, everything was of a certain level.
Yeah.
A lot of not very interesting movies made in America, and now even more so because of the new technology. Anyone literally can make a film if they really want to.
It's true. Although I think those with skill can actually produce a production, can make a beautiful film without the funds that you used to need.
Well, this is a prime example.
Yeah.
What one sees, you know, I'm hoping people will go see this. I know it's going to be playing at the HBO Latino Festival. Is that correct?
It is. Yep.
And you know, this is the beauty and the danger of film festivals. You gotta go when it's showing because you don't know when it's going to come back. It will come back at some point.
Yeah.
But to me, I always like to see these films in film festivals where an audience is ready to discover and interact in a very exciting way. So that's what's going to happen this time, but it will be back for those of you who are not in New York and who cannot get to the HBO Latino Film Festival. I just always say to people, try to go to the festivals that you can.
Well, it's fun because at South by Southwest, which was, I mean, it was exciting to premiere there, and it wasn't our hometown, so it was really people coming who didn't have an attachment to the film, and it was great to feel, you know, we had 3 screenings, and the variety of people responding reflected the diversity of the film. So it was like different ages and different, you know.
I know you're the director, and some directors walk away when the project is finished, but the state of indie filmmaking, just filmmaking in general.
You never can walk away. It just hangs on you forever.
but there's a whole, it's really hard to get an indie film distributed now. The change in distribution from theatrical in theaters, most of the independent art houses have closed. And those that are open are highly competitive about, they almost act like multiplexes, you know?
Right.
You have to, if you don't...
And it's a short run. I mean, if a film's in, it's in for a week. Though there's been a few good independent film screenings here that have been extended.
And you know, the old idea of letting a film build and word of mouth, this is the problem with the film festival. You only have 1 screening. South by Southwest, you had 3 screenings, and people could talk between the first one to the second one to the third one. So it, you know, so here's your baby, you know, and it's finished and it's in a festival, and meaning that it's good enough that people that, you know, objectively say invite you to a film festival of merit, and but then you still have this child.
It is a child. It's like, I mean, still with By Hook or By Crook, we're still talking with our distributor about like, doing a 10-year kind of push again, and you know, get the video on demand. It is, you stay with the kid. You do.
What did Silas, given your background, this was a different step. I'm not going to say a step up or a step whatever. It's a different step. You came in to take a project as a full director and telling a narrative story that wasn't your story, you know, which was sort of the other kinds of films you've done, a bit more personal.
Sure, sure, absolutely.
So as just your own development, tell me how you walked through that.
Well, I mean, Ernesto and I did co-direct it, which was really a great collaboration. We had
I have to correct myself. It's co-directed.
Yes,
okay.
Co-directed. Yeah. So we worked together where I mainly would sort of run rehearsals and talk to actors, but we would always talk to each other in between takes and make sure that every thought that he had, either I would talk to the actors or we would divide and conquer. And that was really great. It was a great experience. And also, because I was involved from the beginning of conceiving the story and talking with them as they, so it was great that it wasn't just something like here's the finished product. And we had a lot of discussion. I mean, Val was on set with us, so there was a lot of communication between all of us.
Any fights?
Any what?
Any fights?
There wasn't any fights.
No,
not that I'm ever going to tell you. It was all love and roses. We actually did. I mean, the benefit of us all being friends beforehand, it was definitely difficult. And working on no money for years is just such a setup for terrible stress. And that comes out, you know, how can it not? There's sacrifices that people have to make, which are just like painful.
At the end of the day...
But we do all like each other.
And that's clear because when we see, I've seen the film now 3 times at 3 different screenings in 3 different settings, and everyone that was there were loving each other and loving what they had produced. And that, you know, there were no fights. There was no, you know.
It was a really, really great shoot. Actually, it was an incredible team. I have to say.
So I'm going to let you invite the audience to your film and tell them why you think they should want to see Sunset Stories.
Want me to do that right now?
Right.
To the camera.
To the camera.
To the camera. Come see Sunset Stories because there's a rare opportunity of seeing a variety of faces and stories authentically told in a whimsical tale. Can I start that over again?
No.
I'm getting distracted.
I think we're okay.
Okay.
It's just like life.
It's just like life, yeah. Yeah, just to get to see a lot of love and authenticity told with entertainment and heart on the screen. I think come see it at the festival here in New York, August 18th, and if not, look for it, Sunset Stories.
Now let's talk a little bit about Robert Altman.
Sure.
Or the kind of genre film it is, in the sense of Jim McKay, in a way, the kind of ordinary people storytelling that he does. I mean, it is in context with that kind of independent filmmaking.
Thank you. I mean, aside from saying thank you, I love all those comparisons.
Yeah,
what would you like me to
like who
speak
mentors
to?
you in a way? Who do you carry in your head? Who do you look to?
I mean, I think big influences for us, you know, with this film, Wong Kar-wai is a big influence, just visually, lyrically. He also does amazing stuff with authenticity and just emotion and his motive cinematic style too. And then you know, After Hours, kind of that urban tale. I mean, it's very different than that, but that kind of like falling down the rabbit hole situation. I think a lot of films, any film from the 70s, I just love, like Dog Day Afternoon, or just like the Midnight Cowboy was a big influence, Cassavetes, just all the ordinary heroes, you know, like the ordinary.
Well, it's interesting you should say Dog Day Afternoon, because once again it's about representation.
Well, yeah, exactly. It didn't explain it. The way they handled his lover was radical to me. I was like, oh, they just get to be this character who's screechy and kind of bails on them, and it just seemed, it was so not the point to make it a fetish or a big deal, or take it out of the context of this is a life. It wasn't exploitative, exactly. Yeah.
Can you tell stories about ordinary people and make them interesting in a cinematic way? Seriously, I mean, that's a challenge.
Well, you can, but unfortunately, Hollywood thinks that if it's not white people doing that it's boring. I mean, honestly, I do think there are a lot of rules to anybody who's not like a mainstream white, you know, person like that. That can be like...
You mean you didn't want Jennifer Aniston for the cardiac delivery person?
Yeah, we wanted her to play the bone marrow, but she said no. But honestly, I mean, that's the glass ceiling that I always find, is that if you are an other, meaning anybody that's not fitting that mainstream, you have to be losing a limb, or you have to be really like selling body parts or part of some sort of like really intense situation in order to earn a not boring storyline. But if you're like some straight white dude, you can be up there talking about, am I ever gonna grow up? I don't know. I want to keep playing guitar and living at my parents' house, and that's endlessly entertaining. And I'm just like, that's really intense. What is a boring storyline? Because it's true. Anytime that you're an outsider not following an extreme storyline, you are boring. And I think that's I'm not saying you're saying that, but I hear that. I hear that hinted at quite a bit. Did you go through
any of the Sundance experience other than having your film play there?
I had By Hook or by Crook, and then I had a documentary, a short 10-minute doc called What I Love About Dying. That was based on Chris Kovic, who's a mentor of mine. And
Chris Kovic was a wonderful poet.
Yeah.
And she died of cancer.
Died of cancer.
And there's a wonderful documentary that is so moving. It makes her alive rather than grief-stricken.
It's yes, thank you. Because she's like a very, humor was such like her thing that it would have been hard to not have that.
Silas, was that your film?
Yeah, I directed that, and Valerie Stadler produced it. And
I love that film.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah,
because I mean, being a gay man, I've went through all these deaths and grief and everything, and seeing someone like Chris, who knew that she had cancer and knew that a certain part of it was terminal, and yet kept living, and role modeling, and being funny, right up until the end.
She was mentoring us on dying every step of the way, right to like going to, pick out the urn and talking about the whole embalming.
These are all taboo subjects too,
and she talked ahead of time about right to die with dignity. She was talking about that, end of the 90s when she was sick, as someone just saying, this is the next right to abortion.
This is. I'm sorry that I never knew.
No, that's
I knew the film. I never knew that you directed that film. But the kind of humanity that is in By Hook and by Crook, the kind of humanity that is in the Chris documentary, which is titled
What I Love About Dying.
What I Love About Dying. What I Love About Dying. Right there. Talk about taboo. And now in Sunset Stories, which is basically a comedy, is the kind of representation of humanity, of ordinary people dealing with the things that life is about.
Right.
And I just want to kudos you for being able to have this through line.
Thank you.
Thank you. Because you could be a crazy person. Everything is set up for you to be a crazy, angry, defiant.